the #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to episode 114 of Costa Rica Real Estate and Investments with me, your host, Richard Bexon. Today, we're going to be talking to Joshua Whitman. I think you guys have probably listened to him before on the podcast, when he was part of Remax. However, since then, he started his own company called Make Costa Rica Home. So Joshua focuses on helping clients make the right investment in Costa Rica and is really specializing in hotels in the Central Valley. So a lot of our discussion topic today is going to be around hotels and investing in the Central Valley. So it's going to be interesting chatting to him, getting his viewpoint on there. And also, I suppose, me kind of, asking some very direct questions on it as well, because I think as a lot of you guys know, I've developed, bought, sold, and actually operated hotels here in Costa Rica and advised some of the, the higher end hotels here in Costa Rica, everything from, Nayada all the way through to, the big W, Westins, those kind of hotels. So this is kind of my wheelhouse. And so it's going to be interesting chatting to him about this. Just so you guys know, we're in the transition months here of November as we transition from what might be the wettest wet season that we've had in 20 years here to the dry season. It's been a while since we've had rain. I flew back from Guanacaste yesterday. It was a beautiful flight, got to see the Arenal volcano, and it was just, I love flying this time of year. So next week, I'm actually in Guanacaste. It looks like actually the whole month of November will be spent in Guanacaste. But I've got to get down to the southern region as my fund is buying a piece of land down there, which we're subdividing and then also selling as well. So, but anyway, if anyone would like to chat with us, I know quite a few of you have reached out. I really appreciate it, guys. I think we're helping quite a few of you and also just, giving you guys some advice on what to do when buying, where to buy, what not to buy. And holding the hand, through the purchase process through a lot of you guys as well, just to make sure that everything, the I's are dotted and T's are crossed as well. I think as I've mentioned to some of you, I'm a pain in the butt when it comes to buying properties, just because I'm very overly protective of anyone that I work with, just because, again, we have a great reputation and we want to keep that reputation going. So you can reach us, info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. That comes straight to me and I'll always reply as quick as I can, guys. But remember, if you have any questions or want to see any future guests on here, please put it in the comments or email us as well. If you've enjoyed this, remember to hit the subscribe link so that you're aware next time our new podcasts come out. But let's get straight into the podcast. Good morning, Joshua. How are you doing?
Morning, Richard. Good to be here. Thanks. Doing well.
No, not at all. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back on the podcast and of what we'll discuss a little bit later, in your new venture. So it's going to be very interesting for the listeners to kind of get an idea of what you've been up to and what you're going to get up to.
It's good to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome. Well, Joshua, the Fed raised, I think, the basis point 0.75 yesterday. The Bank of England also did the same as well. I think, globally, inflation is kind of raging. Central banks are finding ways to kind of reduce that, which I think the only, economic tool that they probably have in their belt at the moment is to continue to raise inflation. So I don't think we're going to see that, slow down anytime soon. We may see another raise, towards the end of the year. But in your opinion, what are you seeing and what impact is it having on Costa Rica's real estate market?
Well, we're seeing a lot of factors in global real estate. Seeing a lot of countries that are closing their options for international investing. If you've been following Canada, you must be a citizen to purchase real estate now there. Like you said, inflation is also a huge factor in determining the value of a property depending on what currency you're purchasing. It's important to keep in mind that we're looking at different markets than just North America. And a lot of customers that I'm working with don't realize that coming to Costa Rica. Yeah. It's in most markets here, it's a buyer's market, or there's very low inventory. And so we do see in places like Flamingo, Tamarindo, in the last several years, we've seen prices increase. But the opportunities are very different than what we're seeing in the United States, Canada, even Europe in many cases. So it creates an interesting playing field for opportunities that we can show using our services to these customers considering to diversify their portfolio
Yeah.
internationally now.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think, just focusing on hotels, I really think it's a buyer's market. There are
Absolutely.
hotels that have sat out there on the market for years and years that I'm aware of. There are hotels that are for sale, but they're just not advertised. I know a lot of the hotel owners that would be very willing to, take a check, for their properties. But I think it's still a buyer's market. But I also think that there's a lot of opportunity there. I was sitting down with some guys last night who are part of a German drinking club, who all work in that industry and are developers, builders here, master planners, etc. And we were just talking that like Costa Rica is only just getting started. Like when you compare it to countries like Mexico, Hawaii, and around the Mediterranean, I mean, we are only just getting started.
Agreed.
So it's going to be interesting to see, where that develops over the next coming years as Costa Rica becomes more of a mature market. And, I think our nightly ADR rates are, our average daily rates are only going to continue to increase here.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. Keeping a close eye on Airbnb, which is a good indicator of rentability,
Yep.
we are seeing that. I mean,
Yeah.
in this last year, which I think is safe to say we're past the pandemic now,
Yep.
post-pandemic, we're seeing very high numbers for what we were considering was low season in 2019 and before.
Yeah.
We don't have as many well-operating businesses closing for October, or even the 3 months of low season.
Yeah.
September and part of November, and even parts of June and July. A lot of my customers are looking at these reports now, and they're finding Costa Rica as an attractive place because the numbers are starting to show that productivity. I think
Yep.
that's very attractive. And like you're saying, we're just at the beginning of a maturing market. I think it's also important to take into consideration what the pandemic did for hospitality industry with people don't need to go to the office anymore. And for the digital nomad, especially that 25 to 45-year-old range, the millennials, Gen X, they're now looking at this as an opportunity to work and travel. And Costa Rica has really made that a predominant drive to attract them with the residency visa for the digital nomad here, as well
Yeah.
as lowering the investor residency down to 150,000. That's so much more accessible. And then to have the benefits of being a resident in Costa Rica, being able to operate a company here.
Yeah.
I think it's going in some cases the opposite to what other countries are experiencing.
Yeah, as you know, I also work in travel as well, so I get to look at that data as well. And 2023 looks like it's going to be the best year, in Costa Rica's history, from arrivals, from ADR, from occupancy. I mean, it's looking like it's going to be, the best year. I mean, especially a January, February, March. We've got blocks at hotels like way out just because we're like, look, January is our biggest sales month, and what determines how big that month is how much availability we can sell, and there's just not that much out there. So we've had to go and pre-purchase everything, just because again, hotels are very bullish at the moment because their ADRs are through the roof, their occupancy looks very strong, and it doesn't appear that this global economic, I would
Unrest.
say, a crisis is having really any impact in Costa Rica. It's quite the opposite, that like Costa Rica appears to be that beacon for people. And that's
I
why I say
agree.
that Costa Rica is only just getting started.
That's right. I mean, we have that base layer of investors looking for a second home, those snowbirds
Yep.
that are trying to escape the cold winters, but we also have the travelers that are finding much more access. I also think
Yep.
that there's an unspoken market gap between, if you can kind of think of the graph, we have price on the y-axis, and then
Yep.
we have this sense of luxury or private on the x-axis. And so down on the origin corner, we'll have hostels, right?
Yep.
Low prices, very there's not a lot of privacy. And then on that bottom line, we have your niche that you work in a lot with with luxury rentals, that high quality. You want your private home detached and away from everybody, where you can have a coffee naked on your balcony.
Yeah.
But we don't have that luxury hotel that's accessible also to that sense of community, where people are paying $150, $250 a night, but they want that community workspace, a place that they can also have fast casual food right there, all of the amenities, but they're not staying in a hostel. And I see a lot of opportunities in Costa Rica where we are shifting from a distressed hotel market where you had a lot of novice owners opening hotels in 2008, 2012, boutique hotels, 8 to 12 rooms, and they've become distressed. They're tired. They don't have capex. They don't have some of the infrastructure within their company for longevity. And at the very beginning of any business, it's important to consider your exit strategy. Are you going to be there your whole life? And is this what you're going to dedicate your life to, or is this truly an investment? And so I think that there's this shift in concept of, one, who are we catering to in hospitality? But two, how are we operating and really developing that concept with a strong base in terms of operations and accounting that for the last decade, I would say a large majority of the hospitality industry kind of ignored because it was their retirement project. But now those owners are getting into their 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're looking at a distressed hotel. It doesn't have great books. The pandemic really did a number on them, and they're looking for selling. The issue that I'm finding as a buyer's agent is, how do we assist these owners in analyzing the market? Because they have this inflated or almost a fantasy sense of, I want to sell my sorry. They have the fantasy sense of, I want to sell my hotel for $500 million. Here's a perfect example. In July, I was in La Fortuna scouting for a client, and a listing agent, actually 3 listing agents, put this property. It's 3 hectares, had 11 rooms, and they have a hot spring source on their property. And they wanted $5 million for it. I said, well, what are you producing? What's your net monthly? And they said, well, about $15,000 a month we're netting. Not looking at any numbers. I took that at face value. I did some quick calculations for a 5-year return on investment, and it comes to about $900,000 value commercially. So I asked the listing agent and the owner, well, where are we getting this $5 million number from? Well, it's because price per square meter, and we have hot springs and we have so much land that you can do so much with. And I said, well, we have to slow down here, because you can't add the property value and replacement value perhaps to the commercial value. We have to look at one or the other. And if we're just looking at the property value and the replacement value, well, then we need to analyze the market. What are other things selling for? And maybe that's what you want, owner, but somebody with $5 million cash and they were not willing to finance is going to be looking for something with much higher productivity than $900,000 net in 5 years, right? So how can we educate the current owners that they potentially have a distressed product right now? And instead of considering, I either have to continue my nose on the grindstone and wait out this market, and that's when we see these properties for 5, 10 years on the market, just waiting, crossing their fingers for that emotional buyer with $5 million. And, oh, I just love this place. And that's a 1 in a billion chance that you're going to have somebody with $5 million to do that. But if we can come to the market with, how are you growing? What are you doing to increase your productivity? Let's not sell your property right now. Let's create goals, short-term, long-term goals. And in 2 or 7 years, your productivity does reach that commercial value of $5 million, because the land around you is not selling for $5 million. There was another greenfield 2-hectare lot just down the road that was for sale for $1.5 million. And that also has been sitting on the market for years. So
Yep.
it's an interesting dichotomy between this dream that many owners have of they think they have just two options. One, continue operating and they don't have money to grow, or two, sell and get out, and that's a distressed sale. And in the owner's perspective, when your property is distressed, that's the worst time to sell. You want to sell that car when it's shiny and new and has just had the tune up and a full tank of gas ready to go,
You want to
not when it's
sell.
broken down with flat
Yep.
tires and you have to push it to get it started.
I mean, you want to sell when you don't want to sell. I mean,
That's
again,
exactly right.
we close on our villa in a week's time, and it was kind of like we didn't really want to sell. The numbers were great, everything was great. Its return was amazing, but it's like now is the time, to sell because the numbers are great and it looks great. You want to sell when you don't want to sell, and I think, I think the problem with distress, like I love distressed assets because again, that's where the opportunity is. I mean, it's if you're buying at market value, it's very difficult sometimes to create value. And I say that from a point of view of I don't really know. I run an investment fund, so finding stuff that's at market value sometimes is not great. I like distressed assets or kind of those diamonds in the rough, but unless you know what it is that you're doing, you can't find them, and you don't know the market. But I mean, I think that when you cut like that property that's 5 million is when you're dealing with an owner that's had it for such a long time and has put so much money and emotion into it, it's like he just needs to understand, and it's really difficult. And I mean, I think that's what you were saying is to educate him, which is like, look, no one's going to pay for your mistakes or the business that it could be. Someone's potentially going to pay for what the business is today, where they're going to see the value as what it could be, but they're not willing to pay for what it could be because it doesn't exist. And there's a risk for that. So they're going to pay for what the value is today. And I think that, as you mentioned, there is getting to that value today is not an easy thing to do.
Right. Right. It takes a network of guidance to get it to that level. And
Correct.
and in my perspective, most realtors in Costa Rica don't have that network.
Yep. I agree. Well, tell us about your new venture. I mean, I'd mentioned it there in the introduction, but like, what is it? And, why did you decide to do it? I mean, we've gone deep into hotels here at the moment, which I think also applies to vacation rentals as well, because a lot of vacation rentals act like hotels. But like, give us an
That's right.
idea of, about your new venture and what it is and why you decided to do it.
Well, 2.5 years ago, I had my first exclusive buyer approach me and said, I really like what you're doing, and I don't see anybody else doing it. Have you considered being an exclusive buyer's agent for investors in the hospitality sector?
Yeah.
And kind of scratched my head and said, gee, yeah, let's do that. So that was the inception of Buy Hotels Costa Rica, paired with the niche of Make Costa Rica Home, because we see a lot of families coming here looking for their second home or to immigrate here permanently. And they're looking for, once I get here, how am I going to cash flow my lifestyle? Because I can't work. I can't have a 9-to-5 job. And so making your money work for you, there's so much opportunity here in building infrastructure, building industry, especially in the tourist industry. It's a destination location, Costa Rica. And there's so many locations in Costa Rica as well. It has great scalability potential, depending on the niche that you're getting involved in. And then so that pairs well with Buy Hotels Costa Rica, because Buy Hotels Costa Rica responds to that. And then in this last year, I have aligned with my associates, Douglas Soto, who works for Zurcher, Odio, and Raven. They've been an established law firm in Costa Rica for over 85 years. Douglas specifically specializes in mergers and acquisitions. He's been parts of very massive deals all over the country. And he's a great resource. He's one of those, Douglas is one of those lawyers that responds quickly, which is a rare find anywhere in the world, but especially here in Costa Rica, where there's the sense of pura vida. We'll get to it next week. Douglas is responding within 24 hours. He has a team of associates that supports all process and progress that moves through his office. So I've been really pleased in working with him. And then my other partner, Renee Pichet, just moved to Costa Rica from Montreal, Canada, about a year ago. He was the #2 producer for all of Caldwell Banker in Canada. And he came here looking to, well, more like make Costa Rica home. He wanted a new lifestyle, seeking that pura vida, and he wanted to stay involved in real estate. So he's been in real estate for the last 30 years and has a very large portfolio of wealthy investors seeking to now diversify their portfolio.
Yeah.
And he's one of those rare gems that as soon as he puts a property in front of one of his investors, they have that trust of, okay, let's go see it.
Yeah.
So putting the three of us together, myself analyzing the market and creating comparative market analysis within the hospitality sector for hotels, Airbnbs, maybe what we could call income producing properties, and hopefully they are producing income instead of in the red. The three of us have come together to create Realtor Signature, which is a brand new umbrella company that is focused on, like we've discussed, giving consulting and solving some of these growing pains that we're seeing in the market right now, changing the distressed property into a flowing property that can be much more attractive to an investment fund, or identifying some of these distressed hotels that the owner is looking for an exit. We can then bring in an operator and the capital investment, maybe from the same place or maybe from different angles, but we are the connector of that. So we have Renee's expertise, we have my market analysis, and we have Douglas's expertise on the whole legal aspect of from immigration to creating that acquisition to analyzing the business. We really have a strong team that we can service our clients. Our objective is to be in touch with all owners or within their network to offer assistance in the question, how are you growing? Everybody wants to talk about their problems, and we want to hear about it. That way we can direct our network to assisting in heating up the growth potential of Costa Rica's real estate, especially in income producing properties.
Well, where do you think that those areas of safe investment are to invest in a hotel in Costa Rica?
It really boils down, and this is my first question that I give my qualifying question I give my customers, is concept. Before we even consider location, what is your concept? Are you going, and there's really two fields of thought here. One, are you going to be a pioneer, or are you going to be on the building on the backs of others already established in that location? So a really good example is looking at Tamarindo. We have Langosta, Tamarindo, a whole bunch of beaches, all the way up to Flamingo and beyond. This is a bustling tourist location. And so if you were to purchase or build a property in that area, your marketing is going to be able to benefit from the overflow and marketing of that location. However, if you go to some place like Orotina or Sarapiquí, for example, out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to need to have a concept that's already established. You need to have your operating team already built and your clientele already in mind, maybe a Rolodex of your board members that you're going to bring there every year. And you need it to be cash flowing from the concept level first, not let's build this, let's buy this, let's try it out and cross our fingers that it works. It all needs to work on paper first before you consider the risk of determining a location. So the three qualifying questions I always have is first, what's your concept? Then with your concept, let's identify your location. And then once we've identified the location, we can get good comparative market analysis, analyzing what already is for sale there, what is selling, and then go in with our budget to determine, is this going to be a good buy? Is this going to be a good investment for their portfolio or for their operation?
Okay. And I mean, what do you think, or what do you believe are the main factors that will determine whether a hotel is going to be kind of a success or going concern or
not? Conservative financial management or revenue management. Yep. So many people think that they can hang out in their bar of their restaurant, be king of the castle, and enjoy the fruits without investing anything back in. And most of the hotels that are coming across my desk don't show capex, capital expenditure. So they don't have this savings fund for replacing their roof or redoing their pool or adding more villas when their ADR is maxed out.
Yeah.
So where are they able to grow within their current budget? I think that that's the first thing that an owner needs to address is how am I making my money continue to work for me? Where am I putting it back in instead of just, great, I'm making $500,000 in net a year. I can travel around the world and buy my own jet. That's toxic thinking for the hospitality industry. That money needs to be saved and safeguarded. And then the second thing, like I touched on, is revenue management. There are a lot of different fields of thought that don't seem to come from the same place, especially in the properties I've looked at here in Costa Rica, where I don't want my capacity to go over 80%. They look at their bed sheets as being overused, and then they'll have to replace their bed sheets. But each bed is a workhorse, and you want that to be at 100% capacity, period. I also see, and you can see this on Airbnb and Booking.com. I'm sure you see it through your travel agency as well. We have a lot of locations that will take reservations 6 months out and 1 month out. And it's really important to have an algorithm that determines what is the market value 6 months out or 1 month out, and then right price your ADR. Because
Yeah.
if you're trying to always beat the market, you're always going to be shooting for a lower price. And if you're trying to keep your occupancy low, you might as well have 2 less beds or 20% less beds than what your full capacity or RevPAR could offer. And so there's a lot of money being left on the table because there is poor revenue management. So I would say
Yeah,
those two things would offer a going concern for any hotel or investment property that we're looking at.
Yeah, I spoke to a hotel owner the other week on the Caribbean who we've had on here before, Colin Brownlee. And, I mean, there's a lot of AI solutions out there that are using, you can integrate with the property management system. You need to keep an eye on them. But he said that his revenue, increased by about 20%, in 2022 by just using a revenue maximization model, which it has its pros and cons. It has its pros that, like, again, from the point of view of working, with a channel manager to push everything out to Expedia, Booking, in these OTAs, it works great. But I think when you're working with a higher end clientele who typically work with agencies want fixed rates. They don't want variable rates, So I think it just depends on who your market is and whether that works. But I do think a variable ADR model is with a pricing strategy is probably, it's fundamental in today's world.
Absolutely.
The airlines do it, so why wouldn't you do it?
Exactly. That's absolutely right.
But yeah, I mean, I think the technology part is becoming more and more, it's pretty interesting that tourism and especially hotels don't seem to be that advanced when it comes to technology, in my experience. There are other industries that, that are far more advanced, but like the industry should be leveraging technology, because again, everything from, I've seen some amazing hotels where, people are walking around with their cell phones and it's telling you when someone checks out of a room so that, mates can go in and clean it, because again, that turnover of that room and maximization of your staff, I mean, has a cost because payroll is a huge part that people don't foresee when they buy something. It could be 50, 60% of your cost structure.
Right. Yeah. Douglas wanted me to touch on that point today, that's one of the hidden costs of operating a hotel or even an Airbnb is understanding the wage structure and salary if you're not just paying for a cleaner in Costa Rica. And I would also hope that there is a changing mindset in this colonialist perspective of coming to Costa Rica and paying $3 an hour for someone to clean toilets in your house or in your hotel. Let's raise the bar in Costa Rica so we're really maintaining this lifestyle amplification for the entire country, not just those coming here with money. But on that point, it is very expensive. I mean, there's aguinaldo, which is the 13th month bonus that we need to keep in mind. You're paying a 13th month.
It's not a bonus. It's not a bonus. it's
It's
you
not,
have to
it's
pay
not
it,
an
right?
optional bonus,
No,
right?
exactly.
There's, there is yes or yes on the aguinaldo. There is
Yep.
also caja, which
Yep. The
can
Social
be 30.
Security. Yeah.
Yeah, the Social Security, that can be 30% of somebody's salary. So if you're agreeing to pay somebody $500 a month for full-time work, which sounds very low, I mean, that immediately bumps up to 750 with with your caja, with your insurance, and then you also have another month that you're paying on that. So those are
Yeah.
some hidden prices or hidden costs that is not on face value necessarily. If you're looking at the books of a highly producing and very efficient hotel, they should have that on there if you're getting
Yeah.
a year's worth of P&L statements. But that being said, it's important to consider how can we lower those costs. And I think you touched on a great point. If you can have self check-in just from an app, I'm seeing these what are they called? Um, these
Yeah.
bracelets.
Yep.
Selena uses them. Stay Onda and Playa Grande uses them.
Yep.
Check into your own room. Now you don't have to have anybody organizing keys.
Yep.
There's a headache in and of itself.
Or you just do
So,
the
and
codes, the Z-Way codes on the locks, that change every
right on
single
your
time, and
phone,
it
you
emails
can
you and
order
it comes
food.
on your phone. Exactly.
Room
So
service, but you don't have to have anybody coming to your room. It's that fast casual sense that I see, especially in the growing market of the digital nomad, looking at places like Hawaii, Bali,
yep.
Costa Rica, where people are very comfortable with this technology. How can we implement that in their hospitality experience? It's a no-brainer. And
Yeah,
then
I
with
agree.
that, you don't need 5 people at the front desk. You need one. And they also are staffing the kitchen, right?
Yep.
Making sure that plates are being cleared off. You have tech savvy people in the kitchen that are simply reading a computer when orders come in. Now it's much more fast and it's also much more casual, which is one of the KPIs that digital nomads are really looking for in their stay. It's, is this going to be an easy place for me to check in, stay, and check out? Am I going to be comfortable there? Am I
Yeah.
also going to feel welcomed there? And so I think there's this interesting dichotomy between they don't want the hostel, they don't want to be secluded in the mountains in their own home necessarily, and they also don't want this private luxury hotel suite as well because there's no common spaces. They want to be sitting next to somebody else discussing, are you seeing what's happening to Ethereum lately? Or are you seeing what's happening in the global economy? Or where are you traveling next? Oh, I was just there. That's what the digital nomad is looking for. And if we can create those types of opportunities here, then we're really heating up the market.
I agree. I agree. Well, I've kept you long enough, Josh. But my last question for you, which I love to ask anyone, if you inherited $500,000 and had to invest it or in a business or real estate in Costa Rica, what would you do with it and why?
Yeah, I would look at the hot markets. We're looking in the north, Costa Tamarindo, Samara Nosara. That's a little more residential market. Then further south, we're looking at a very populous digital nomad community and higher end living lifestyle community in Santa Teresa and that Matapalo area. And then looking at obviously at Jaco, Manuel Antonio, and everything in between there. I mean, that's just a stone's throw between the two. And then down into Uvita. Those are really hot markets right now. So looking at buying land close to those city centers, if we can call them that,
Yep.
we're looking at great return in the next 2 to 5 years with the market trajectory that we're looking at in real estate. $500,000 could buy you a huge amount of land right now. Spend some time subdividing that, creating a plan with some consultants in how to create that into an eco villa type community or a wellness center, or sit on the land and sell it in 2 or 5 years, and you could
Yeah.
make a great return.
Yeah.
However, I really like operations. And so I think I would take that $500,000. One of my favorite places in Costa Rica is Manuel Antonio. Find a place with an ocean view, probably a fire sale right before high season, should be turnkey, already with an operating staff. Jump into that 4 or 5 bedroom and look at a 90 to 150 gross revenue annually. And I think
If you find that, tell me. because I'll buy it.
I'm looking at several right now, actually. Might need to do a little bit of leveraging, which is a whole nother ball game here in Costa Rica.
Sure. Well, awesome, Joshua. This has been yeah, no, definitely. Well, this has been great. Really appreciate all your expertise and also your advice. I'm sure the listeners do. We'll get you on again at some point in the future, but just really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us this morning.
My pleasure, Richard. Always. Thank you very much.
Have a good day. I hope you enjoyed that podcast there with Joshua Whitman, guys. As you can see, he has quite a bit of experience there with hotels, buying and selling, and also working with owners of hotels as well. So if you're interested in getting into contact with him, you can do. All of his contact details will be in the description down below. On the coming podcast, we're going to be talking with David Carr, getting a bit of an update over there in the HACO market as well. Also talking pretty heavily on vacation rentals. Is there a saturation happening in the Airbnb market that's in that HACO Playa Hermosa area? So it's going to be interesting to chat with him and get his viewpoint on that. Remember, guys, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us 5 stars, write some reviews. I read one the other day. It's been a while since we've had a couple of them, so it's always great to hear them. Remember, you can reach out to us for anything that you guys need. I have 15 minutes for everyone. You can email us info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. Until the next podcast, guys, appreciate you listening, and please keep up the support. Thanks very much.
The #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.